Und wir wollen das Thema Europa jetzt noch weiter vertiefen und haben uns kompetente Unterstützung eingeladen. Wir hatten heute Morgen ja schon den Africa Table, China Table und jetzt den Europe Table. Und ich freue mich sehr auf Till Hoppe, der nämlich das Team vom Europe Table leitet. Er hat nicht nur in Berlin oder aus Berlin berichtet, sondern war auch lange Korrespondent aus Brüssel und ist unser Mann, wenn es um Thema Europa geht. Lieber Herr Hoppe, herzlich willkommen.
Thank you very much, Danda. We'll switch to English now again, since we're talking about Europe. Warm welcome from me. I'm very glad to lead you through the next about half an hour, maybe, well, more or less half an hour that we will still have, to talk about a very timely debate on the European single market and its global role. We have excellent panelists. Let me introduce them to you. First, we have Christian Hirte, a member of the Bundestag from Thuringia and a former parliamentary state secretary in the Ministry for Economy. Please come up here. Secondly, we have Franziska von Becker. She's executive advisor at MAC Mode GmbH, which is a leading trouser manufacturer based in Waldrosbach in Bavaria, one of many hidden champions in the German Mittelstand. In this case, hidden in the Bavarian forest, a very beautiful area, by the way. She will answer the questions in German, so if you need translation for German, there are some headphones over there. And thirdly, we have Ricardo Arroja, president of ICEP, the Portugal Trade and Investment Agency. Ricardo, please come up. So, the question that we would like to discuss up here is how can Europe strengthen its single market and translate its economic heft, which is quite big actually, into political influence on the global stage. It's a question that has become pretty urgent in the last couple of weeks when President Donald Trump has triggered a massive wave of tariffs on global trading partners, including the EU. It remains to be seen whether he's seeking actually deals, lowering these tariffs again, or probably not abolishing them, or if he's going for pure protectionism, possibly reshaping the global economic order. At the same time, China has built up huge industrial overcapacities in many sectors. Steel is one of them, solar panels, electric vehicles, and is very eager to export them, especially to Europe, now that the American market is basically closed. So all in all, Europe is in a pretty tough spot. It's basically two things it can do. The first is protecting its interests, for example, through trade defense instruments. Just today, about an hour ago, it has decided to impose the first counterbalancing tariffs against the US for steel and aluminum tariffs of the US administration. And the second thing is strengthen its own economy in order to become more competitive. And I would like to start our discussion with the latter question. First, turning to you, Christian Hirte. Just about an hour ago, the party leaders of CDU, CSU, and SPD have presented their coalition treaty, which they've been negotiating over the last couple of weeks. From your point of view, what are the main new initiatives in order to boost German competitiveness and boost the very lackluster economic growth?
Yeah, first, thanks. Can you hear me? Yes. First, thanks for inviting me on this panel. And I'm happy to talk with you. What I think is very important is that we in Germany know that Europe is our most important partner on trade issues. So I think Germany needs to take a stronger responsibility within the European Union. And maybe a couple of you realized that in the last years, often about Germany were talked with a position that was called German vote. The last coalition was not able to have a German standpoint within the European Union. And I think it's important that Germany, as the strongest economy in Europe, is taking its responsibility in leading Europe in this very struggling times. And I think on the second point, we need to do our job at home. And what we see today with the proposal of the new coalition treaty, that we will have super what was the German, the English word for Abschreibung? Tax reduces.
Depreciation.
What is the name?
Depreciation?
So 30% for 3 years, I think that's a lot. And beginning in 2028 with the lowering of the capital taxes for companies, I think that's an important issue too. And on third point, I think it's very, very important that we do a lot to reduce bureaucracy. We will reduce the bureaucracy costs within the next 3 or 4 years about 25%, and that's billions of euros for the German companies. And I think that's also an important signal within the European Union to strengthen our market.
That number you've basically copy-pasted by President von der Leyen, I think, right? Because she has it in her...
Sorry?
The number of 25% cutting red tape has been copy-pasted by from the European Commission, I think. President von der Leyen has it in her work program as well. But
well, in politics, it's allowed to copy-paste. And sometimes you should look what others do better than yourself. I think that's a good point to do the same. And I think we see also a shift on the European Commission. When they talk about Green Deal, it's now more with deal and not only green. We need a strong economy in Europe in these struggling times, and we need to do more within the European market to strengthen our own position on climate issues, on energy issues, and so on.
Yeah. Turning to you, Ricardo, the new German coalition will be able to spend huge sums after it changed its laws, its constitution. Is that a good message, good news for Europe as well, from your point of view? And what else would need to happen on the structural level?
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation. Of course, it's a very good sign, and it's a good direction in terms of consumption and investment trends that we'll see in Europe. We obviously know that Germany is a very strong economy within Europe, one of the strongest economies in the world. And of course, we need strong market leaders. And indeed, if Germany is doing that shift and is starting to invest more in certain industries, I think that all of Europe will indeed benefit from that. At this time, we are witnessing a great opportunity for Europe to develop its internal market with the geopolitical challenges that we have as we speak. Indeed, we should look at Europe as a market of almost 500 million people with high income levels, and indeed a market where there will be new greenfield and brownfield investment in the coming years in a whole range of industries in which Europe has somewhat lost market significance over the past decades. But at the same time, we have to remain very open. And indeed, within these presentations, I usually say that for Portugal, we try to remain open, friendly and smart. And I think that should apply to all of Europe. And indeed, when we look today at the challenges at the European level, and in speaking now specifically about industrial challenges, what you see is the need in Europe to evolve from mid-technologies that Europe has specialized in over the past decades into some of these high-tech technologies that today are clearly more advanced, not only in the US, but also in China. So in that sense, there are plenty of opportunities, and the crucial aspect is that we remain very open about cross-border investments. In Portugal, last year, we established a new record in terms of inflows of foreign direct investment, over 13 billion euros. FDI as a percentage of the GDP today in Portugal is around 70%. We want that to remain on a rising path. And going back to the industrial matrix that we see, as I said, we want to evolve from activities that were medium value added in nature and gradually make them higher value added. And I'll give you some examples. For example, in Portugal, we specialized for a long time in the textile sector. Today, what we're doing is that we're moving forward in terms of some of the niche ends of the textile industry, such as technical textiles. And that, in turn, allows us for the introduction of nanotechnologies. So we are increasing the ladder of technology and the ladder of value added. And this happens in this particular sector. It happens in others, for instance. Let me give you another example, an example in which German companies are pretty well present. Pharmaceuticals. So today, the pharmaceutical sector is a major export sector in the Portuguese economy, roughly around 15% compound annual growth rate over the past 10 years in terms of our exports of pharmaceutical products. And we are evolving towards biotechnology. And from biotechnology, we're also evolving towards synthetic biology. And again, another example of the kind of evolution that I think we can manage not only in Portugal, but at a European-wide level. And for that to happen, I think the most pressing challenge would be not only in terms of investing in new strategic autonomy in many areas, but also investing in harmonizing the regulatory landscape. Today, what you see amongst European countries is that you see the same set of EU-wide directives, but then they are transposed in different manners into national law. And I think harmonizing that legal system would be a major advantage for doing business in Europe. And that would start, for instance, by harmonizing the insolvency regimes. We have, a plethora of insolvency regimes across Europe, and that is a critical element in the capitalist system, because obviously you want to recycle bad capital into good capital, and for that to happen, you need an efficient insolvency regime. But obviously, I could talk about other issues, such as certifications, such as industrial standards, where you also see divergences across Europe, and that is not helpful, because in the end, it increases the policy uncertainty. And going back to the original theme of the tariffs and the geopolitics that today we are witnessing around the world, I think that in the next 5 to 10 years, the importance of policy certainty will be increasingly cherished by investors and will be a huge asset for companies to boast and to showcase to the world, and that, I think, is a huge opportunity for Europe as a whole.
Yeah, we will discuss that a bit later. Franziska, I think Mac is actually producing in Portugal, isn't it? So it's still coming from textile level. From your point of view as a SME textile producer, producing in several European countries, what would be needed in order to ease your business, to grow faster in Europe than you actually can at the moment?
Danke erstmal, dass ich auch hier sein darf als deutscher Mittelstand. Ich versuche jetzt mal bei den ganzen politischen Themen hier wirklich mal die Sicht von uns als erfolgreiches Hidden Champion Mittelstandsunternehmen hier zu präsentieren. Und danke für die Frage. Wir produzieren hauptsächlich in Europa tatsächlich, und es hat einen Grund, Qualität. Und ich glaube, wir haben noch nicht so über Made in Germany, Made in Europe als wirklicher Differenzierungsmerkmal zu anderen, sage ich mal, ich kann jetzt nur von der Kleidung sprechen, ne? Die zu uns nach Europa oder nach Deutschland reingeschwemmt werden, wie Shein und Temu. Und also unsere Hosen, wir haben davon einen Stand, wer schon mal gesehen hat, Mac Jeans, wie gesagt, wir machen 6 Millionen Hosen im Jahr und sind hier in Deutschland so der breiteste, größte Hosenhersteller. Warum? Weil die Hosen passen und weil wir eine Qualität haben. Und dieses Merkmal würden wir jetzt nicht in Fernost, wie viele haben ja irgendwo die Produktion ausgelagert, das würden wir so nicht bekommen. Deswegen ist es ganz klar, dass wir die Qualität, wo wir uns einen Unterschied machen und auch den Preis verlangen können, den wir verlangen, also den unsere Kundinnen auch zahlen, den können wir nur in Europa erreichen. Also das ist erstmal super. Also ich glaube, dass Europa weiterhin ein ganz wichtiger Produktionsstandort ist. Ich habe aber noch so 3 Gedanken, was wir bräuchten von der Politik. fahre jetzt mal so rum, um auch weiterhin erfolgreich zu sein. Das eine ist das Thema gleicher Wettbewerb für alle. Also ich weiß nicht, wer das so kennt, dieses Thema Ultra Fast Fashion von Shein und Temu. Das betrifft zwar uns jetzt als Marke nicht direkt, weil das keine Mitbewerber sind, aber es ist natürlich ein Wahnsinnsthema für unsere Branche. Also jeden Tag nach Deutschland kommen 400.000 Sendungen aus China. Und zwar komplett ohne Kontrolle, komplett ohne, sage ich mal, Sicherheitsstandards. Und das ist natürlich wirklich irgendwo, ja, wir fühlen uns natürlich irgendwie, ja, nicht mehr, also es ist kein gleicher Wettbewerb, weil wir als deutsches Unternehmen müssen so viel Sicherheitsstandard und so viel chemische Standards, ne, es sind so viel, zum Glück, Absicherung für den Konsumenten da, dass das halt einfach nicht geht. Ne? Also ich hoffe, dass da in der EU jetzt ein Umdenken passiert und dass diese Zollfreiheit mit 150 €, ne, dass die jetzt aufgehoben wird, aber das ist einfach nicht, das ist nicht okay. Das beutelt unsere Branche gerade, das ist ein Riesenthema.
Just on this point, would it be enough in order to get rid of this 150 € exemption for duties in order to deal with this problem, if you see it as a problem, or what else would have to be needed? Shein and Temu, etc.
Also was interessant ist, ist ja, dass an sich dieses Geschäftsmodell ist spannend, ne? Weil sie direkt von dem Manufacturing to Consumer, das ist auch eigentlich ein tatsächlich sogar nachhaltigeres Geschäftsmodell, weil keine Überproduktion entsteht. Es ist halt nur so, wie es jetzt gehandelt wird, dass im Prinzip so viele Pakete, also 400.000 Pakete pro Tag nach Deutschland, das sind jetzt nicht nur Kleidung, das ist auch alles Mögliche, wird da kleine Elektrogeräte und so weiter. Ne? Ich will das jetzt auch gar nicht so fokussieren. Das ist nur, weil ich jetzt von der Bekleidungsbranche spreche und weil wir über EU sprechen, ist es halt, glaube ich, nochmal wichtig, hier der Audience zu sagen, das ist ein Riesenthema für uns und gerade auch das Thema Nachhaltigkeit, für was ich auch sehr kämpfe und was auch für uns als Marke auch Teil unserer DNA ist es natürlich auch irgendwo, ja, sag ich mal, ein Schlag ins Gesicht, ne? Weil da gibt es halt einfach welche, die mit unfairen Mitteln arbeiten. Und da wünschen wir uns einfach auch, dass das Thema nachhaltigeres Wirtschaften in irgendeiner Weise ja auch einen Anreiz bieten kann in Zukunft. Ne? Also es war ja so, was wünschen wir uns von der Politik oder was wünschen wir uns, um größer zu sein? Also besserer Wettbewerb für alle, fairerer Wettbewerb. Zweitens nachhaltigeres Wirtschaften, dass es irgendwo einen Anreiz gibt. Und nicht wie die CSRD, die dann im Prinzip erst angeschoben wird, dann wieder zurückgenommen wird, dann irgendwie wahnsinniges Bürokratiemonster ist nicht so ganz ideal. Ne? Also ist total, wir als Bekleidungsbranche haben 10% der CO2-Emissionen, sind wir verantwortlich, deswegen müssen wir was tun. Aber wir müssen irgendwo auch einen Anreiz haben, dass das angeschoben wird. Und einen dritten Punkt, ja, den habe ich aber, glaube ich, schon vorhin gesagt, das Made in Europe, Made in Germany, das ist ein unglaublicher Wert, den wir haben. Wir in Deutschland waren mal das Land der sind es hoffentlich noch, der Dichter, Denker und der Ingenieure. Und Europa, glaube ich, sowieso auch. Und das ist halt ein Alleinstellungsmerkmal, was uns ganz klar das abhebt von allen anderen. Und da wünsche ich mir, dass wir einfach diesen Innovationskraft, die auch im Thema Zukunftsfähigkeit, Nachhaltigkeit so wichtig ist, dass wir wirklich die Möglichkeiten dafür schaffen in Europa.
Christian Hirte, innovation is one point, but especially the German economy hasn't been too strong in the last couple of years. What your party is suggesting, and it's also, as you mentioned, part of the coalition treaty, slashing red tape, getting rid of bureaucracy in order to boost innovation, and also delayed a bit lowering the taxes for enterprises. But is that actually enough in order to boost innovation, or what else would be needed from your point of view?
Well, I think bureaucracy is a very, very big topic, and referring to the former speakers, I think it's very important to have a level playing field within the whole of Europe. So what we want to do in the future, and it is a part of our coalition treaty, is to do European regulations only one-to-one into German law, to have the same regulation within all European countries. And what we see at the moment is that we have lots of non-tariff barriers within Europe because there is always a little bit extra in Germany, in Austria, in Portugal, or wherever. And I think that is a very, very big, important issue. We need to create a real single market. And at the moment, we don't have this single market. Sure, you can sell all your products to all European countries, but there are some barriers that are not tariffs, that are not barriers at the borders, but regulation that is different within the European countries. So I think we need to create a real single market, what we don't have at the moment. And what we need to do, also in reference to our partners in the world, that not we as Germany create own regulation for tariffs or for regulation, but to look for only EU regulation towards foreign countries. So that, for instance, it's not possible for Trump to negotiate with Germany as the strongest partner in Europe, own special regulations, and other countries have problems with this regulation, what is done with Germany, what might be in our national interest, but not in our European interest. So I think we need to push some topics only on a European level, because in the very end, it's in our national interest, not only in Germany, but in all other European member states, to create a strong partner in negotiations. And in the past, we are not. We have lots of topics where we do a lot on our own national agenda, what is understandable, but it's not, I think, appropriate for the future in these struggling times. So regulation is an important issue, bureaucracy is an important issue, and well, taxes, I'm a tax lawyer, is always important, but I think it's not the main topic.
It's not in the DNA of a national politician to step back and say, okay, let's leave it to the Europeans, right? They're eager to do it themselves. Ricardo, Portugal is quite successful in triggering, and you mentioned some examples, triggering innovative companies, digital economy, but also other sectors. Europe as a whole is not very successful in creating successful startups. Startups, yes, but not scale-ups. If they have to grow and raise a lot of money in order to head towards the exit, IPO, etc., it's usually American VCs or investors who are cutting the deal. So what would be needed in order to boost those sort of scale-ups in Europe? Maybe a EU innovation fund providing scale-up equity financing, something like this? Or?
Well, first of all, I think that we need a true capital markets union in Europe. Also, we need more risk capital. If you look at the financing of the startups and scale-ups and you compare the situation that you have in Europe and in the US, what you see is that there's a lot more risk capital coming from institutional investors in the US rather than in Europe. And that leads to a paradoxical situation in which you have indeed the beginning stages of the company being developed in Europe, because indeed we have in Europe very strong scientific and technological institutions, but then it reaches a certain stage where companies, instead of developing their business models and reaching another scale in Europe, they tend to go to the US to have that additional boost in terms of the long-term projections and in terms of long-term potential. So that is something that you can do via regulatory initiatives, and not only promoting more risk capital as a whole across Europe, but also nudging the incentives in the regulatory perspective to allow banks and quasi-banks and financial markets and shadow capital markets to indeed engage more companies at the startup and the scale-up phase. What you really need also is a more successful knowledge transfer. So coming back again to the science and technology that is produced in Europe, it is top tier. We compare very favorably in terms of science developments with other regions in the world. However, when you try to make the bridge between academia and business, that is where indeed sometimes you are not successful or are not as successful as in other areas of the world. My understanding is that when it comes to investment by business interests, when it comes to corporate divisions of large companies, what these companies are really willing to finance and willing to support is the project that will change the business model, that has the capability to radically changing business activity. And in that regard, it is critically important for Europe and for its startups and scale-ups to invest in frontier technologies and high-tech technologies. I mentioned a few examples ago, nanotechnologies, synthetic biology, which are areas in which we are trying to develop efforts in Portugal. But there are others, robotics. I just came back from China, and the level of development in robotics and in humanoid robots in China is significant. It's amazing. So we have to do more in that respect. We have to develop also artificial intelligence so that we can become a beacon of innovation in a way that, with all frankness, we are now laggards and not leaders compared to other regions of the world. So we have to be, relatively humble to admit to that issue, and at the same time to engage with other players around the world and also partner with them. When we think about being open, friendly, and smart, each one of these axes is important. And indeed, being smart means promoting in Europe the development in partnership with countries from other parts of the world of these technology in which we clearly see that other countries have very strong value chains and very strong capabilities already developed. And that is exactly what we're doing in Portugal. So as I said previously, we have had a record influx of foreign direct investment in the last year. We are a very open economy. For instance, with Germany, Germany is our second largest client. Between exports and imports, we're talking about a 30 billion euro commerce between the two countries. Germany is our sixth largest investor, and the investment that we see is indeed spread across multiple sectors. In the automotive sector, Volkswagen Group has been a very significant investor over the years. Today, we have not only the internal combustion engine being developed in Portugal, but also EVs being manufactured in Portugal. At the same time, we've just announced a major investment by a Chinese company involved in the battery development sector. So now we have EVs, we have the lithium batteries, and indeed we also have deposits of lithium itself. So we have the three vectors that will allow the electric vehicle industry to bloom in Portugal. And these are areas that are also, allowing developments in other adjacent sectors. For instance, aeronautics. We've just announced a major investment by Lufthansa in Portugal for its maintenance and repair operations. And we also have Airbus. So, I could go on and on with examples. As I said, the critical element is to merge the traditional and the modern, to merge what you already know how to do, and these frontier technologies that in 10 years' time will change the world.
Turning to the trade issue, since we have about 10 minutes left. How do you read the action of President Trump of the last couple of weeks? Do you see this as a strategy to weaken the dollar, make the US more competitive on manufacturing, or what is he aiming for?
Well, first of all, I think protectionism and tariff policies in general self-defeating. And it is self-defeating because you don't substitute for imports, instantly. And indeed, in many cases, the kind of greenfield projects that protectionist policies aim at promoting indeed, occur usually within a significant period of time. So they will eventually, if they are indeed successful, which I doubt it, they will only be successful in 10 years' time. And in the medium term, what you have less production, you have higher prices, less available options for consumers.
And less wealth if you are investing in the stock market.
Well, that's obviously we understand that the stock market has, daily fluctuations, but in the end, yes, I think remaining open and an open economy will help capital markets as well. But again, I think this is a good opportunity for Europe to integrate itself, and indeed what you see is that the value chains that are being disrupted today will eventually find their place or a new place in Europe, and in Portugal we want to be part of that.
Mm-hmm. Francisca, from your point of view, I mean, the tariffs that Trump slapped on countries are especially high for a couple of countries like Vietnam, like Pakistan, like Cambodia, that are important producers in the textile sector. But what I think I understand your company is not directly affected by these tariffs, but what's your lesson you take from these actions?
Ja, ich finde es auch gerade total spannend, was jetzt passiert, was wir in 1-2 Jahren sehen werden in den USA. Also was ich jetzt nur sagen kann, wir selber, haben wir ja vorhin schon gesprochen, wir haben einen ganz kleinen Anteil in den USA und wir sind auf einem sehr hohen Niveau da preislich. Da werden die 20% oder 25% uns jetzt nicht in dem Markt irgendwie schädigen. Aber in Deutschland ist natürlich jetzt Puma, Adidas, die großen Konzerne, Hugo Boss, auch ein großes Amerika-Geschäft, die werden schon damit zu tun haben. Ich weiß nicht, ich kann das ja ein bisschen, also Turnschuhe zum Beispiel gehören aus 100 kleinen Einzelteilen. Also wenn man einen Turnschuh kauft, das sind ungefähr 100 Teile, die da in so einem Turnschuh drin sind. Nike, große amerikanische Marke, hat, habe ich jetzt nur gelesen, irgendwie einen Hauptanteil in Vietnam. 36% Zoll. Also ich bin mal gespannt, wie das jetzt so passiert in Amerika mit Nike-Turnschuhen, ob sich, also wie das dann das Preisgefüge passiert, wie unsere Mitbewerber Adidas, Puma, wie sie darauf reagieren. Das ist so die eine Seite, die ich dazu sagen kann. Die andere Seite, Supply Chain grundsätzlich. Ich glaube, dass es uns stark macht, was Sie auch gesagt haben, dass wir in Europa einfach viel mehr Richtung Nearshoring, Friendly Shoring sagen wir das auch, ne? weil wir einfach gemerkt haben, allein schon zum Beispiel durch Covid, das ist eine andere Situation, aber da haben wir auch gemerkt, plötzlich die krasse Covid-Politik von China hat uns irgendwie ein Reißverschluss war dann irgendwo in diesem einen Kanal da festgesteckt. Und wir konnten nicht ausliefern. Plötzlich haben wir gemerkt, die Supply Chain, die sonst immer total diversifiziert war und irgendwo kommt es ja irgendwo her, plötzlich haben wir echt ein Problem gehabt. Und das merkt man jetzt immer mehr, dass diese Supply Chains, was wir alles vor 10 Jahren rausgegeben haben, versuchen wir alle in der Industrie wieder unter Kontrolle zu bekommen. Einmal natürlich, um auch nachhaltige Aktionen zu haben. Ja, also wir können nicht ESG-Kriterien erfüllen, wenn wir nicht wissen, wo überhaupt unser Zeug herkommt. Aber das andere ist auch Thema Risk Management und eben geopolitische Themen, wo wir einfach uns rüsten müssen. Zölle, Klimakatastrophen in Vietnam, Kambodscha und so weiter, wo viel Produktion stattfindet. Also wenn wir nicht genau wissen, wo was ist, dann haben wir ein Thema. Und ich glaube, das ist so eine Erkenntnis, was wir merken in unserer Branche, dass die Transparenz und resiliente Supply Chain extrem wichtig sind, zum einen. Und das andere ist, ja, vielleicht friendly Nearshoring, also wieder zurückholen, dass das gar nicht mehr so das Preisthema ist, sondern einfach die Verfügbarkeit und die Resilienz der Supply Chain.
The next German coalition has just agreed to abolish the German supply chain due diligence sustainability law. You think that's the right thing to do, or especially in this situation? There's still the European one should mention, but.
Also das deutsche Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz ist ein Thema, was uns alle ziemlich gestresst hat. Wie soll ich sprechen? Also als strategische Beraterin sage ich, das ist wichtig. Das ist wichtig, dass wir wegkommen von dem uns interessiert nicht, wo unsere Sachen herkommen, ne? In eine Verantwortung an den Hersteller zurück. Also sage ich jetzt als strategischer Mensch. Als Mensch der Industrie, die weiß, was das bedeutet, wenn man das wirklich transparent machen möchte und wenn man da auch wirklich Mitarbeitende einstellen muss, die das alles bewältigen muss, sage ich natürlich, das ist ein bürokratisches Monster. Also 2 Herzen in meiner Brust. Jetzt haben wir sowieso mit der CSR Doppel-D oder wie sie heißt, also dass das europäische Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz kommt und das ist wahrscheinlich abgeschwächt und ich glaube, es ist auf jeden Fall lange Sicht richtig, dass wir eine Transparenz bekommen. Sonst kann man keine ESG machen, kein Riskmanagement, nichts und ist eigentlich nicht zukunftsfähig. Die Frage ist nur, wie bürokratisch muss es sein, aber das kann ich jetzt leider nicht lösen. Wie gesagt, das sind zwei Herzen in meiner Brust zu dem Thema.
Mr. Hirte, would you like to abolish the European supply chain law as well? Or keep it and downsizing it a bit?
No, but we want to kill the German Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz. And I think that's the right way. Because I think we need some regulation, but not extra regulation in Germany on top to the European regulation. And in a situation where we will have a global trade war, we should do nothing what is an additional problem for our German companies and for the European economy. I fear that the next years will be very, very problematic for all of us, and we need to look for all the possibilities to reduce regulation and give companies an open field to work and to produce and to trade. I fear that Trump is very, very serious about what he's telling. I think he is convinced that Europe and China is treating America and that the American worker is in a situation where the foreign countries are producing a bad situation in the US. And I think he thinks he's doing right. Probably the markets will show that he's not.
At the same time, Trump's policy might create chances for free trade agreements with other countries in the world. Especially India might be one, Indonesia, both countries where otherwise, under different circumstances, would be very difficult to agree on a free trade agreement. Talks with India have been going on for a long time. I don't know who would like to answer this question, but it might be, things might be changing given the circumstances, right? Would you like? Right.
Sure. Of course, free trade agreements are a huge opportunity, and I would also add the free trade agreement that has been in progress between the EU and China for some years. Also the free trade agreement that has just been agreed to between the EU and Mercosur and Latin America. We're talking about, in conjunction, 1.7 billion people, if you consider China and the Mercosur countries.
Are you optimistic that the Mercosur will actually be agreed in the EU level? There are many.
Well, the principle, the agreement in principle has been established, so we have to be optimistic and we have to see the glass half full. What we could do, indeed, is to try to speed up those processes, because there are plenty of opportunities in these countries, and that fits into what is today's paradigm of international commerce. So on one hand, we see that there's fragmentation of value chain and also friend-shoring. Geoeconomics is another word that is now a buzzword. So it means that countries going forward will have to be relatively aligned in terms of political principles. I won't say cultural principles, but political principles, because in that sense trade will be easier rather than between countries that are not aligned politically. And at the same time, you see that the average distance of trade is still rising. And there's a very interesting statistics the other day. I was reading a McKinsey paper, and the paper said that the average distance per dollar traded in today's world commerce is 5,200 kilometers. And that has increased over the past decade. So you see, on one hand, fragmentation of international commerce. And on the other hand, you still see the value chain becoming longer at the tail. So this says that you will not go back to 19th century international trade, that indeed you might have protectionist pressures, but at the same time that the world will remain open. And the potential to benefit from this increased openness in a politically divided world is indeed to establish free trade agreements with the countries or the regions that are willing to establish those free trade agreements. So moving from principle to practice is critical at this stage.
Christian Hirte, would it be a good idea to downsize those trade agreements? Doesn't have to be the full picture, the full package with all the sustainability sections, for example. Would that help, getting to smaller, more focused industrial tariff deals, for example?
I don't know. But what I know is that we need to be much more pragmatic in a lot of political fields within Germany, within Europe, and globally. And I think the Trump trade shock will push not only us in Germany, but also all us Europeans to be more pragmatic in climate issues, in environmental issues, in trade issues. I think we are also in the future on the top level in the world with social responsibility, with environmental issues, with climate issues. But we need to be more pragmatic.
You see, since we have to come to an end, just for a short answer, you think that Europe is able to grab the chance that the Trump disruption actually provides?
Of course.
Okay, the optimistic one.
I think ich glaube, wir müssen Europa an sich verstehen als große Chance für Innovation, für Qualität und nicht, ich weiß, es ist schwierig zu sagen, nicht dauernd auf USA gucken, aber es ist da jetzt, aber ich kann es nicht mehr hören, dass es ist nur noch da. Ne? Wir hören 24/7 hören wir, was Trump macht. Und warum hören wir nicht einfach, was wir auch machen? Und sind uns unserer Stärken auch bewusst. Und ich glaube, dass Nachhaltigkeit nicht von der Agenda zum Beispiel gestrichen werden darf, weil das ist die Zukunft. Ne? Also wenn wir nicht an die Zukunft glauben und nicht Innovation für die Zukunft bereitstellen, wer soll es denn dann tun? Also ich finde es wichtig.
Das war nicht mein Plädoyer.
Nein, wir müssen es pragmatisch machen und wir müssen Anreize schaffen. Wir müssen Anreize schaffen und wir müssen eine gleiche Wettbewerbsfähigkeit haben wie Temo Shein, das geht gar nicht. Ne? Und solche Dinge. Aber wir haben solche Stärken in Europa und wir haben auch einen starken Binnenmarkt. Warum müssen wir dauernd schauen, was Amerika macht? Wenn ich das so. Ja.
Would you like to give you?
I agree. I just said that I think we will be on the very top of all these issues. Environmental issues, climate, social responsibility, and so on. But we did a little bit too much on a couple of issues.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
If you look at each single issue, there is a good reason to care for it. But the amount of what we did in the last years and decades, it was too much regulation. And that's why I said we need fewer bureaucracy, we need more pragmatism, and I think the shock will lead to it.
And more innovation.
More innovation.
Easier said than done, though. Well, thank you very much to the three of you for the lively debate. Thank you very much to the audience, and I think it's back to you, Sandra.
Till Hoppe.